Welcome back to episode 2 of Wicked Awesome Nintendo, your bi-weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Scott Creamer. You can find Wicked Awesome Nintendo on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Email your questions to wickedawesomenintendo@gmail.com. Pre-orders for the Switch 2 have finally been confirmed for North America. Plus, what is The Legend of Zelda's next step for the Switch 2 after Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom? Here to talk about it this week is my co-host, Shane Hibbard. Shane, how you doing this week?
I'm doing much better than last we spoke,
Yep.
thanks to the news.
A little bit of anxiety got lifted off your shoulders. Feeling pretty good now. Um, got some incredible news late last week. We're recording on a Sunday, so
Mhm.
late last week the news broke that pre-orders are back on the table for the U.S. finally. So Shane, how you feeling about that?
I'm happy. We were anxious. Now we got another level of anxiety that creeps in when I realize, oh, now I actually got to make sure I get my pre-order in.
Now
But
I got to
I
get
will
this
take
thing. Yeah,
that. Yeah. I'll take that anxiety over. Well, will we see it at all? So
yeah.
feeling
There was
good.
a lot of unknowns when it came to the pre-order situation. We didn't know when it was going to go live. We knew that the date was still June 5th for release, but we didn't know when the pre-orders were going to go live again. We didn't know if there was going to be a significant price increase to the console. If they were, we really didn't know what the hell they were going to do. But some good, some bad. April 24th is the newly announced date for Switch 2 pre-orders in
Yep.
the US. I don't know about Canada. I haven't heard anything about Canada. I would assume that it is the same time because Canada and the US were aligned when it came to the original pre-order date. So you
Yep.
would assume that they're going to be aligned the same way with the second date as well.
You would think,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, but the price of the console stay the same. 450 for the standard, 500 for the Mario Kart World Bundle. Um, how do you feel? How do you feel about the price? Do you still feel like that's a good value? Do you feel like, yeah, I'm sure you feel relieved that it didn't go up, but what are your overall thoughts about the price in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sticks with what we talked about last time on just like what are we getting in the hardware? Would I love for it to be less? Sure.
Yeah,
Do I think
yeah,
it could have been? I don't know. Like I don't know. I don't think we'll know till we get it and realize like, oh, it performs up to what we expected, and this is kind of in line with other gaming handhelds now. But like definitely there were moments where I was like, is this thing going up a little bit? Is this thing going up to $600, $700? Are we getting it at all? So for it to come back and them to say, hey, you guys can get it for the price that we advertised a couple weeks ago, I'll take it.
yeah. I played I played a lot of games in my head during that point in time. I was like, no, they're gonna keep it the same. It's like, well, maybe they'll raise it, and like the terror situation was just like it's pretty volatile there for a while there, and you weren't really sure which way it was gonna go. Uh, the Switch is manufactured in Vietnam. They got hit with a 45% tariff at first, and then the government sort of backed off. There was just that blanket 10% tariff, and it seems like Nintendo is just going to eat that cost. Uh, so, electronics, well, computers, certain electronics were exempt from the tariffs, but uh, the government classifies the Nintendo Switch as a toy for some reason. So that is still subject to the 10% tariff from Vietnam, and of course, some accessories are manufactured in China. So we did see price increases for some things. The dock, the Joy-Con, everything went up $5 as far as accessories go. The carrying case, I think the dock went up $10, and then weirdly enough, so they announced new amiibo. They announced the Street Fighter amiibo, which were 29.99 each, and then they announced a new round of Zelda amiibo based off the characters, the new champions, or however you want to classify them, from Tears of the Kingdom. and those were originally $20 each. It seems like all those amiibo went up $10, which is pretty significant because
Mhm.
the amiibo, yeah, I love them. I think they look cool on the shelf, but I'm not gonna dish out $30 for an amiibo. Like that's never gonna happen. I mean, a couple years ago they went up from 12.99 to 15.99. And even that, it's like, okay, I'll do that. I don't like it, but like the fact that all the new Zelda amiibo are $30 now, supposedly, it's not confirmed, but GameStop adjusted their prices. Target took down all the listings altogether. So it doesn't bode well. And then you got the Street Fighter amiibo at $40 a piece. Like I don't really think that's I don't think they're gonna sell many amiibo, quite honestly. But Shane, what are your thoughts about the pricing on all the accessories, the amiibo, and all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I didn't dig too deep into that amiibo piece of it.
Yeah,
So, that's like, is that where they're trying to win back some of the cost they're eating on the Switch? You would think. Yeah, I mean, I think that, the amiibo is going up by $10, which is a 50% increase ish, right? Something like
that's
that.
significant. You would think
Yeah.
that they're probably manufactured in China, which China is getting murdered with the tariffs. It's 125% tariff. So I mean, good luck importing anything from China, really. Yeah, I think you're on the right track. They're trying to make up for anything they're losing anywhere they can, which is smart. You don't want to raise the price of the main system and make all your um make all your fans upset even more than they are, because a lot of people think that the price of the Switch 2 is too high. Whether or not you agree or disagree, that's a whole other conversation. But they got to make up for it somewhere. So
Yeah, it was like when I was looking at it, I was thinking, okay, they've got their 10% tariff they've got right now, even the flat 10%. If they're trying to make that up on what they were eating from the console itself, and they were like, all right, the Joy-Con grips went up $5, and I think those were 19.99 or 24.99, whatever that is.
yeah,
Add $5 on. All right, there's 20%. It's going up 20%. The controllers went up $5, and that was only like, I don't know, it's an $80 controller going up $5. That's what, 6 or something percent. So it's
hmm
like they're just trying to balance out this 10% across all the accessories.
yeah,
And then the dock obviously going up $10 was about a 10% increase. So yeah, I mean, you could see it kind of all evens out to being, hey, here's 10% more across the accessories, to try to help offset what we're losing from the console to keep the console where we intended it to be.
yeah. And they basically said in the future, um, everything is pretty much subject to change, as far as pricing goes. So if you are at all interested in the Switch 2, I would suggest just getting it at launch. It's not going to go down in price. If anything, it's going to go up in price. We've seen that throughout the life cycle of the PS5 so far. It's gone up in price. It hasn't in North America, or I don't know if it has in Canada, not the US, but I know it's seen price increases in other countries, and it hasn't really seen a significant price drop. Around the holidays, I think the digital one was 375 for a short time, but the Switch, it's been $300 like clockwork, and it's never seen a
Hmm.
price decrease. So if you're gonna get in, I would get in now. I wouldn't wait. If you're at all interested, or of course, you have the funds and everything, um, make sure you get in early, because you can see significant price increases in the future if the economic reality remains as it is today. So
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's where we're at, right?
yeah, um, but that's pretty much all we have on the pre-order. Oh no, we do have more on the pre-order date, or the pre-order timing.
Mm.
Um, It looks like as far as retailers go, Walmart and Target are gonna go live at midnight on April 24th, so that's 12 AM? 12 AM, yep. I know how to tell time. Um, and
12 a.m.
then
Eastern time, right?
Eastern time. It looks like GameStop is going live at 11 AM, Eastern time, online in store. Best Buy is to be determined, and Amazon is MIA for the Switch 2 completely. I don't know what the beef is between Nintendo and Amazon nowadays. I know back in the day, um, I think before the Switch came out, they had some beef and Amazon wasn't carrying Nintendo games or stuff like that. It seems like they're beefing for some reason again. Maybe do you have any sort of like theories as to why Amazon isn't carrying the Switch 2 for pre-orders or pre-ordering games or anything like that? You have any thoughts on that?
My only thought is that maybe in their stepping back and saying, "How do we combat resellers?" Maybe they identified Amazon as the biggest threat to that initiative, where it was just like, "We don't know how to combat scalpers," you know what I mean? Scalpers grabbing a bunch of consoles on Amazon. Maybe Amazon wasn't cooperating with what Nintendo was looking to do to make it so that the fans got the Switch 2 and not just whoever chose to buy it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Amazon is the biggest retailer in the world, and I feel like Amazon feels like they can just do whatever they want. If they want to break street dates, they're just gonna do whatever. It's like, we'll ship out the Switch a week ahead of time. We really don't care. So maybe Nintendo's like, well, screw you.
Yeah, true.
We're not gonna make the Switch available for pre-order for you. If you want it after it's already out, you can sell it, but we're not gonna allocate any stock to you for pre-orders because you're gonna break the street date or whatever. I really don't know what's going on. I don't really use Amazon to pre-order anything, so I'm not really familiar with how their pre-orders go if you get stuff early or whatever. So
Yeah, no, very rare for me, and I don't remember anything being not at the time I expected it, but that doesn't mean that I'm a good representation of what you'd expect from them.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
So that's all we got on the pre-order situation. It's finally been reconfirmed the date. We can all collectively take a sigh of relief, and we can move on with our next anxiety ridden activity, trying to actually pre-order the damn system. So I'm sure
Mhm.
that'll go over as well as you're expecting. So,
Yeah, exactly.
but a thought that's been kicking around in my head when it comes to the Switch 2 is what is the Legend of Zelda's next step for the Nintendo Switch 2? With the Switch One, we saw a complete reinvention of Zelda. Maybe consider it moving it back to its roots as far as like an open world, um, go anywhere, kind of do anything game. That's kind of like how the Zelda One was. But it was a complete reinvention. You had all this freedom, all this. You can go anywhere, do anything, explore what where you want, when you wanted. Um, but I don't know where you sort of go from there as far as the next step for Zelda for the Switch 2. I know that Breath of the Wild is the Zelda game that I always sort of wanted. Um, being a Zelda fan for over 25 years, I always imagined what it would be like to explore a Zelda game that was just vast and you could just explore anywhere. But I'm not sure as far as like the dungeons go and like the divine beasts and the shrines. I
Mm.
wasn't super bothered by them. I Don't get me wrong, I love the traditional dungeons and everything in Zelda, but I wasn't as miffed about the divine beasts and the shrines as everyone else was. I thought they were fine. Um, but what are your thoughts about Zelda 3D Zelda specifically on the Switch, as far as Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom go.
Yeah, I mean, thoughts that just popped out at me was about like what you said with divine beasts um and shrines. I think that I agree with you that I didn't find the divine beast to be nearly as bad as anyone said. My issue, and it's like it's a two-sided thing where I narratively I like what they did, but from a gameplay perspective and like diversity, I didn't love it. Was just like the bosses of the divine beasts, the
Yep.
different the different versions of Blight Ganon or what it was, where it was kind of a similar character with a different elemental theme. And I like it's so conflicting because I thought that that was a really cool approach and a really cool idea to like thematically have a different, smaller version of Ganon that's kind of like whatever I'm trying to say here, block the control the beast, whatever we're saying. But um at the same time, it was like, all right, I know exactly what to expect the next time I get to another divine beast. It's going to be a very similar fight, just a different elemental attack that I'm going to have to avoid or work around. Um, but then you go back and you're like, well, anyone could pick any of these first, so it has to be a similar experience regardless of where you go. So like
Mhm.
I'm at odds with that, but that's like that was maybe my major gripe was from a gameplay perspective, it wasn't as diverse as I would have hoped, but thematically I did appreciate it. So like I don't listen to anything I'm saying because that makes no sense.
No, that does make perfect sense. As far as storytelling goes, and yeah, like you were saying thematically, like that fits incredibly well with what they were trying to do in Breath of the Wild.
Mhm.
Um, the story that, Calamity Ganon is just unleashed on this world, and he split apart parts of his soul, and he put them into these divine beasts, and he took down these champions that were supposed to be the strongest in all of Hyrule, and now he sort of has control over everything. He's got the divine beasts, he's got all the guardians, he's got this army of, bokoblins and moblins and all this other, Lionels. um, yeah, thematically the bosses make sense, but it got kind of repetitive and
Hmm.
boring in a way to
Well, a
to
little
like look
stale.
at.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were looking at the same thing every single. You knew what to expect for the most part. Like mechanically, they did different things, but they all look the same pretty much. Like some slight variations, but um, I think, yeah, I think for Breath of the Wild, the only thing that really bugged me was, yes, the bosses could have been a lot better. And then but I think they tried to make up for it with the overworld world bosses, like the High Nox and like the Taluses and stuff, which
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that was fine, but it
But
didn't
like
hit the same way as regular Zelda does.
no, like what you're looking for is like that sense of like mystery when you get to the end of the dungeon, you're like, what kind of crazy creature are they going to throw in front of me now? And I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
as you moved on and like once you finish the first divine beast and you hit the second one and you realize that it's just a different version of a similar character, then like when you get that third and fourth, you're like, well, I know what to expect now. Like I know what I'm going to fight, and it just kind of like was kind of a flat end to each of those beasts.
Yeah, it was sort of a letdown, but I think overall, Breath of Wild is like, as far as storytelling goes, and just like that sense of like you're alone in this world, and there's not a ton around, and like the sense of discovery that um is in the game, the environmental storytelling, um, where you look off in the distance and you see something interesting, and like you just go off. Or like when I was playing the game, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna go here on the map, and then I'd be walking, and then I'd veer off because I'd see something cool out of the corner of my eye. I'd be like, "Oh, what is that? Let's take a slight detour and see what that is." And then you
Mhm.
do that detour. It's like, "Oh, that's really cool." And then you go back to like the main thing that you were going for, and then you see something else. And it's like I totally, like, I fell in love with that sort of element to the game. Um, you know, Breath of Wild definitely isn't perfect. Like the weapon breaking system, I didn't care for that. Like just let me keep my weapons. Like I'll obviously I'm gonna find the weapons that I like, and that's what I'm gonna use, and
Mhm.
get over it. Like just let let me keep my weapons. Like I don't want to I don't want my great flame blade to break and I had to go searching for another one or, you know,
Mm.
whatever. Um,
I
but I
like the
think
exploration, don't force me to do it,
right,
endlessly and unnecessarily. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right. Yeah,
But again,
let
nitpicking.
me
Yeah.
yeah, I think overall like the direction they took Zelda in Breath of the Wild was uh it's one of my all-time favorite games.
Agreed.
And then here comes Tears of the Kingdom, which I'm to this day so conflicted about that game. I I like it. I don't even know. I don't know if I love it. There's a couple reasons for that. I think one, the storytelling in Tears of the Kingdom is a lot weaker than Breath of the Wild. Although, well, as far as
Mm.
story goes, we'll just take story. I think
Overall,
Breath of the
cover
Wild,
to cover, weaker.
yes, in my
Yeah,
opinion, like
yeah.
you're entitled. You know, everyone's entitled to their own opinions. That's my opinion.
Mm,
Also, the fact that they force that sort of like building mechanic on you and you you didn't have much of a choice than to interface with it at some point during the game. I don't want Minecraft in my Zelda game. Like, I'm sorry. Like, that's just like Zelda's never had that before, and I didn't really care for it.
mm.
Um, what do you think about the weaknesses of Tears of the Kingdom compared to the weaknesses of Breath of the Wild?
I mean, I think it's clearer to identify for Tears of the Kingdom things that stand out as weaknesses, only because they went into a more focused direction with it. You know, we nitpicked on the bosses and the weapons in Breath of the Wild because everything else that was there was so new and fresh and open and non-restricting. Where I feel like Tears of the Kingdom, they started to pick, all right, we're gonna lean into crafting, so you have to do it. You know, there's no skipping around that. And I mean, everything with the newly added, um, like the depths that are there was like, I guess you didn't necessarily have to go there, but I feel like they were very polarizing on whether you liked them or didn't like them.
Hmm.
Um, and I think overall, just being like, hey guys, it's the same map that you've seen before. We're doing it again with the same map with minor like it's very clear, and they're much bigger cons, I think, um, than what you saw in Breath of the Wild. Now, again, some people might have loved that, and I think looking at my comments on the bosses in Breath of the Wild, like thematically making sense. I think the fact that they were like, we feel strongly enough that we want to use the same map for Tears of the Kingdom. Like, I find that really cool. Like, that's a really
Yeah,
cool idea. I
yeah.
don't know if it always translates to the most fun game, especially knowing that Breath of the Wild, one of the best things about it was that like sense of wonder and exploration. You
Hmm.
lose that a little bit when you're exploring the same areas. Now again, I know changes to areas were there, and some of those were great. You know, some of that stuff was cool, but overall, it was like, okay, we've kind of lost the sense of wonder only because you chose to pick the same place, which again, conflicting, I also think is kind of cool because then it gives it like a sense of like this is what Hyrule is. So,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah, yeah. There's only so much you can really change, though. It's like, yeah, you added the Sky Islands, you made it a big deal, but at the end of the day, there wasn't really much up there that was interesting at all. Like, sure, you had the Great Sky Island and you explored. That was your Great Plateau moment in Tears of the Kingdom. But overall, like there wasn't really much up there as far as the Sky Islands go. I didn't think it was very interesting. The depths, it was fine, but you were fumbling around in the dark half the time, and you didn't really know where you were going. You were running into gloom every single turn you took.
mm,
So I don't know. Like I will say, like Tears of the Kingdom does have its strengths, you know, and I think its strengths comes in its boss battles. Like its boss battles, like all those bosses in all the dungeons, like are fantastic in my opinion. Even like some people don't like the water temple. I thought the water temple boss was fine. It was kind of a cool different idea. Um but
It felt Nintendo, I can say that. Like,
yeah,
it felt like a Nintendo boss, I think, so, like, that
right, right.
had that going for it, right?
Yeah. But I think over, including the final boss, like the final boss in Tears of the Kingdom that was a good boss fight.
Mhm.
Um but if pound for pound, I think that Tears of the Kingdom gave you too much freedom, which I think is to its detriment at the end of the day. Whereas, sure, Breath of the Wild gave you a bunch of freedom, but it was, I don't know.
Exploration. It was like freedom of exploration as opposed to freedom of creativity that you saw with Tears of the Kingdom.
Right, right. And there was really only so much you could really do with the freedom you had in Breath of the Wild. There were limits. Whereas Tears of the Kingdom, it doesn't feel like there's any limits to your exploration, which
Mm,
you could fuse a couple fans together and a steering stick and just do whatever you want, which that's not what I really look for in a Zelda game. Like
mhm.
I love Breath of the Wild. I loved exploring, but I loved the fact that it's like I couldn't zoom across the entire map in like a second. If you take fast travel out of the equation, of course.
Right.
But
Yep.
you couldn't just zoom across the map on a horse, or like you couldn't build like a go kart or anything, and just like I don't know. I just really I don't jive with like the sort of building mechanics in really any game as far as like uh build your own vehicle to traverse and stuff like that. I don't like that a ton. And I really didn't jive with it in Tears of the Kingdom. Um and that's I don't know. That's why I feel like I'm not as high on it as Breath of the Wild. So and another thing, I really didn't like the fuse, like how you can fuse your own weapons. I think
Mm,
in Breath of the Wild, like they made all these new and interesting swords and spears and great blades and all this other stuff, and they were cool. Like they did a great job with them, and then they kind of took that away in Tears of the Kingdom, and they made it's like okay, you can fuse an acorn to a stick. It's like okay, cool, maybe like none of the weapons were cool and none of the weapons were interesting. It's like I'm just gonna stick with the Master Sword then, I guess, and I'll use your little acorn stick in between like charges with the Master Sword, but that's pretty much it. Um,
mm.
so yeah, what are your thoughts? Do you have any other thoughts about it?
No, yeah, I mean, I think I agree there, and it just invites an added layer of, uh, that level of, creativity and openness to, like, building and crafting occasionally invites a certain level of jankiness that
Mm,
I don't
yeah,
think we're always accustomed to in a Legend of Zelda game.
right.
So, again, I think there's just things that are clear that are like, okay, rubs you the wrong way. I think it's one that I look forward to replaying in the future, though. Going
Sure.
into it,
Yeah.
knowing these things already, and just being like, how can I, knowing what knowing what's different about it, how can I play it again and just try to like, you know what, I'm going to lean into these things and I'm going to see if I actually enjoy the experience if I just try to play the game that they put out here. Because I think me when I played through it the first time, I was like, I want the least amount to do with all this other stuff that I don't like. And I did the
Hmm.
minimal amount of building and the minimal amount of exploring of the depths. And I think that maybe that hurt my experience with it because I didn't check out everything that they had on offer. So, but like you wouldn't know that going in the first time, right? Like I don't think I guess you could watch trailers and find out, but if you go in
Yeah.
blind, you probably don't expect it to that level. Um, so it is one that I have mixed feelings on, but it's one that I look forward to playing again, specifically because I'm curious as to how I will feel about it, knowing how I feel about it.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, yeah, I think maybe playing it on the Switch 2 with all the enhancements might smooth out because
Yeah,
I don't know, like seeing everything run better and look better, it does sort of change your feelings about it.
yeah.
And Tears of the Kingdom famously did not run very well, no matter how much everybody wants to say it did not. It got down to like pretty low frame rates in what basically whenever you were using Ultra Hand. Um, but yeah, I think overall, like I just really hope that they don't take this sort of building mechanic into the future of Zelda. It was fine using it for one game, but like I don't listen, I don't want to sit there and fuse sticks together all day long. Like I just like that's not what I want to do. Like that's not what Zelda's about. Zelda's about,
Mm.
the story and the exploration and the discovery and the secrets and it's not about building airplanes, I tell you that much.
Not the Zelda we want, really.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
But this gets you thinking like what is Zelda's next step on the Switch 2? Like
yeah.
what does it look like? What are your hopes? What are your wishes? I know that, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, there's certainly very ambitious games. Take a long time to make. There's a lot that goes into it. A lot of people work on those games, probably up to 1,000 people, I would imagine. Um, but when you think of the next Zelda game,
Mm.
what sort of thoughts pop up in your head? What do you want to see out of it? Um, where do you want to go? What do you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think getting to see Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom run on Switch 2, I think that that's gonna be a great look into what we can expect from a technical perspective and what they're capable of putting forward. Just like knowing what they tried to do with Tears of the Kingdom, and I know I'm backtracking just for a second, but just like um, knowing what they tried to do with Tears of the Kingdom and how did it perform well on the hardware. It performed well for the hardware that it was on, right? Like for a modern
Yeah,
standard, I don't think it was up to standard, but it performed well on the hardware. So getting to see that on Switch 2 and like how well is it going to run? What are we going to expect? What are they going to be able to push forward from what they've already established? Like if they can get that to run at a consistent frame rate with some higher resolutions, okay, then we know that the hardware that we've got can support hopefully the next vision that they're going to have.
you would think so. I mean, I think the word is coming out that these games, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom on Switch 2, from what is shown so far, they're running at 1440p, 60 frames per second. That's what I've been sort of seeing from these different places. Whether or not I'm sure it has a 4K option, 4K 60. So, can you expect that from the next Zelda game? I would think so. I would like them to move away from the Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom art style. Although I love I love the way those games look. They look incredible. That art
Mhm.
style is gonna hold up 50 years from now because look at the Wind Waker's art style compared to Twilight Princess.
Mm.
And you'll see what holds up well and what sort of doesn't. Because going back to play Twilight Princess now, it's like, okay, you could tell this was a game from uh the mid 2000s because there's some rougher edges, and they tried to go like the realistic, gritty, mature Zelda route, and it just doesn't hold up. Like I love Twilight Princess, but the art style doesn't hold up as much as Wind Waker does. So I think that overall, uh, as far as art style goes, they had the tech demo back when the Wii U was being shown off. They had this Zelda tech demo. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it was Link. He was walking into a temple, and then he was battling this gigantic spider, and that art style just always it always looked fantastic to me. So I kind of wish that they would take like a sort of middle approach to like sort of realistic but sort of cartoony cell shaded, not so much like Skyward Sword, maybe like a step closer to the realistic, but like still keep it kind of cartoony. And I feel like that tech demo from the Wii U, that art style sort of struck that balance pretty well. And I think that my hope is that they go with an art style like that, because I think it looks cool, it looks clean. It's not like, I feel like an art style like that will hold up really well. I feel like any art style like nowadays will hold up really well like years from now, because
Mm,
games just look so good now. But as far as art style goes, I think that something like that, the Wii U tech demo, would be nice. I think a mix of classic Zelda and the open world Breath of the Wild type style Zelda. And what I mean by that is, give us back our items, give us back our dungeons, give us 8 dungeons. Let each dungeon have a specific item to get through the dungeon, and then we can use that dungeon out in the open world. But give me a hook shot back. Give me a Gale boomerang, or give me a double claw shot, or I don't know. Give me something. Give me something cool. Like, give me a couple abilities at the beginning, like you do Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, just to just to make sure I can get through the world. And when I get to the dungeon, I get whatever item. Um, I think that I think a mix of, bring back that flavor of old 3D Zelda, rather than just keeping on this track of moving so far away from it that Zelda doesn't look like the 3D Zeldas of old anymore. I don't
mhm.
know what your thoughts are on that at all. So
Yeah, no, no, that's I mean, I think that that's one of the avenues they could have taken post Breath of the Wild. Like, they leaned into more of the open creativity that they were I think they were seeing, online, people getting creative with the minimal abilities that you had in Breath of the Wild, and they were just like, "Let's blow it up and just give everyone what they want." What if they would have gone a different path and people were like, "Oh, we don't like the divine beasts and we don't like those bosses. Can we
right.
get something a little bit more structured?" Which I think is kind of what you're mentioning is can we get something that's got the openness of Breath of the Wild, but when it comes to the dungeons and the expected like, high points in the story, can we get something that's a little bit more structured and a little bit more what we had come to expect, for the past 30 years prior to Breath of the Wild. Um, and yeah, I wonder if like does that game look like something more like a open. I'm just trying to think. Do you have stats now? Like, would you rather have had them instead of having building? It's like, all right, now you have stats that you level up, and it kind of goes more into like a semi RPG where you can like make a different build for your Link that fights in different ways with different weapon types. Like, I know that that's not something that's ever existed before, but would you want them to try something like that?
I don't know. Like, I don't know. God of War did it, so I mean, they could. Yeah, they could. I mean, they could. I don't know what that looks like though. It's like
Yeah, I mean,
what
yeah.
they did add like very light RPG elements into Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, as far as like each armor had a different stat, and like you could use the potions to sort of like buff up different like fire resistance, and
Mm,
for a
yeah,
short
yeah,
period of time.
clothing paste. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Would
So
you want it to be like like you leveled up?
I don't personally, no.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't think I would like that.
yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to say. Like I don't know, because I know Nintendo would go in unexpected direction as far as like something like that goes. Like they wouldn't do it like everyone else does. Um they would do it their way, which I
Mhm.
appreciate. how they go against the grain as far as like already established mechanics in games. They sort of put their own twists on that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how how I would feel about that until like it was in front of me and I was engaging with it. That
Yeah.
could be interesting. They did, they did add sort of very very light elements like that as far as like weapons and clothing goes. Gave you the different stats, but yeah, that could be an interesting way to go. Um, one thing that I think Zelda really needs incredibly bad is the next game. We need to go away from Hyrule. We need to
Mm.
we need to find a new land. We need to, Zelda's not uh, a stranger to exploring new worlds. We had Colin Island in Link's Awakening. We had Termina in Majora's Mask. Where else have we gone? Have we just gone to Hyrule? The rest,
I think so.
see,
We're
Ocarina of
probably
Time,
forgetting
Hyrule.
something obvious that we shouldn't, but
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure there's like a were the no the Oracle games weren't Hyrule. I don't think. I don't remember what those lands were called. But I
mm,
think it's been a long time in a 3D Zelda game that we were not exploring Hyrule. I think
yeah.
the last time we left Hyrule was Majora's Mask as far as 3D goes. So it's been a long time since we explored anywhere new. You got any thoughts on that?
I mean, I agree. I think that would be great. I think that, especially with them reusing the same Hyrule twice, I think for them to get away from that, even if they took a one game break and then came back to it, like that's I think what was missing between these is that it was back to back games with the same Hyrule.
Yeah,
If there was a
yeah,
game in between where you went somewhere else and then they were like, hey guys, guess what? We're bringing Breath of the Wild Hyrule back for this next game. I think people probably would have been more excited and it would have put enough of a pause and a gap in between that maybe it wouldn't have felt as redundant. But yeah, I mean, I think how do you work that into a story? I mean, you could work it anyway into a story. Really, I don't I don't think it's that difficult. Um,
no, no. I don't. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be incredibly difficult to chart a new land or whatever. So I mean, would
yeah,
you consider Wind Waker in Hyrule? Is that Hyrule? It still is, right?
yeah, it is. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
it's a very different Hyrule than what you'd normally come to
Right. Yeah.
expect. But yeah, um, hmm, yeah, I would you want to still be Link? You would,
Yeah. I would. I,
yeah.
I don't. I didn't mind being Zelda and Echoes of Wisdom, but when it comes to 3D Zelda, I want to be Link. I don't mind controlling somebody else. If there's like a certain section of the game
Mm,
that they're like, oh, you got to control Zelda now. It In Tears of the Kingdom, it would have been cool if you bounce back and forth between Zelda and Link, and you play the section of the game in the timeline Zelda's in, and then you go back and play the section of the game that Link was in. I think
yep,
that would have been really cool, but they didn't do that. I'm not opposed to doing something like that, but as far as it goes, personally for me, I want Link to be my main character that I'm controlling in the game. So
yeah.
that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. You have to think that someone at some point in time during the development of Tears of the Kingdom said, "Let's do that. Let's give Zelda her own storyline side by side." And it must have like I'm sure someone thought it and like the scope of that game was just too big to actually execute it. But yeah, I think that that would have made the game a lot better and a lot more interesting. I really like that specific Zelda as well. The
Oh, I
Tears of the
love her.
Kingdom
Yeah, yeah,
Zelda. Yeah.
yeah.
She's one of the better
Sh-
ones.
Yeah, agreed.
Um I mean I had an interesting thought on um what if we get like a Ganondorf origin story? What if it's just like what if you play what and again this is like crazy out there. But like what if you're playing as Ganondorf before he's like the evil Ganondorf that we know and you get to see how he becomes this monster that everyone knows him as.
Is he born evil or is he?
I think that you could make the story whatever you wanted. Like, maybe at this point we know that he's born evil, but maybe this is like a retelling. I don't know.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing those stories where they, like, take the villain you always knew and, like, remakes them as, like, a, "Well, before he was evil, he actually was this character, and he's evil
Mm.
because," you give yourself a reason to, like, not always fully hate the villain because you know how they got to be evil. And I just wonder, like, what if you did, like, a sort of, like, darker, grittier, like, spin-off story in the Zelda world where you get to play as Ganondorf as he becomes this monster that everyone knows?
A completely different spinoff?
Yeah, yeah. I guess if we're talking about what happens, in the
That'd be
future
cool.
of
That'd be
Zelda on
cool.
Switch
Yeah.
2, wouldn't it be kind of cool to be like, hey, play as Ganondorf as he becomes evil, and maybe there's actually a villain that he's fighting against, and then at the end he becomes, you get sort of the Darth Vader story there.
Yeah. I think that I don't know. I feel like maybe they should make like a 3D like 2 3D Zelda teams, like a 1 then a 1A, and
Hmm.
maybe start pumping out these games like every 4 years as opposed to pumping them out every 6 to 7.
Yeah.
And then use Grezzo as your top-down 2D Zelda team, and then pop one of those out every once in a while, like a top-down Zelda. Because
Mm.
we had 2 in the Switch generation with, the Link's Awakening remake, and then we had Echoes of Wisdom. Link's Awakening came out 2019, Echoes of Wisdom 2024, so it was 5 years apart, um, as far as that goes. So if you release a new 3D Zelda game every 4 years, and then 2 years after that, so you release the 3D Zelda after 4 years. So say we reset it with the next Zelda game,
Mhm.
which let's say that's gonna take 6 years. So we get that when did Tears of the Kingdom come out? 23. So we'll get the next Zelda game out in 29. 2 years after that, we get a 2D Zelda,
Mhm.
and then 2 years after that, we get
The next 3D.
the next 3D Zelda. That
Yeah.
doesn't work. I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass, really.
We're trying to figure out how we don't have to wait how we don't only get one 3D Zelda on Switch 2.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it's gonna be. It's just gonna be one, honestly.
Mhm.
That's gonna be
Mhm.
sad.
Yeah.
But my opinion is like, let's for the next Zelda game, let's leave Ganon behind. Ganondorf, Ganon, it's like
Mhm.
the past 2 games, he's been at the forefront. And I get like Breath of the Wild was a different version of him. It was like a Ganon Beast Unleashed, and yes, sure.
Yeah.
But it's like let's have somebody new. When's the last time we had? I mean, I guess Demise and Skyward Sword is the last time we had a different villain. But
Mhm.
isn't Demise just Ganon? Really? Like that was like a Ganon is Demise reincarnated. If you follow like the Zelda timeline, the all the Zelda stories, like
Mm.
so. I mean, I don't know. Like I'm kind of I just kind of want like a whole new like a Skull Kid or in Majora's Mask, like
Yeah.
or a Vati in a Minish Cap, or it's like you've done it before, so like let's
Yeah.
let's let's make a new villain who's interesting and different motivations and cool backstory, and I feel like that will that will go a long way in this next step of Zelda. In my opinion.
Yeah. No, I think you got a lot of fans that came on with the Switch and with Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom that you could probably release a new villain, and a lot of people might not even know that it's been Ganon or Ganondorf for 90% of the games. They just might think it's a new villain, and, like, since those 2 games were tied together, makes sense to have the same villain there.
Hmm.
Um, so why not have it just be someone new? Might not even notice. Um, And I think if you like what we said about making it in a new area, leave Hyrule, that would support having it be a different villain. I think my question would be like, would you have the same like would you still have Gorons? And would you still have like
New
would it
races,
be
yeah,
all the
that
races
that'd be
there?
cool. Yeah.
You could really like you could do a lot. Essentially, what we're saying is give us Breath of the Wild in a new map with a new villain, new races. I'll buy it. Doesn't just like give us the same thing again.
But, like, it doesn't need to be like, you could give us new like, you could bring back old races from old games, like,
Yeah.
give us, like, the Dekus or bring back the Kokiri, that would be cool, or, like, bring back the Minish, that would be cool as well. Like, they were kicking around the idea with Breath of the Wild of, having Link, visit, Minish Village, like, bring back
Yeah.
that like, there's plenty of races out in the Zelda history that haven't been seen in a while. Like, sure, did we see the Deku in Echoes of Wisdom? Yes, we did. We haven't seen the Kokiri, and if you want to make the argument that the Koroks are the Kokiris now, I I like the idea that Kokiris better, in my opinion, but we haven't seen the
Mhm.
Kokiris since, I mean, I guess a pinch in Wind Waker, but not really because they were already the Koroks, but whatever. But like since Ocarina of Time, you haven't seen the Kokiris. Since the
Mhm.
Minish Cap, the Minish haven't been in a Zelda game. The Dekus haven't really been in the forefront, in 3D Zelda since, um I don't even know. Maybe Majora's Mask? Uh
That
I don't
sounds right.
I don't know if they were in
Not
Twilight
recent.
Princess. Maybe they were in Skyward Sword. But anyways, but yeah, and then you could add like
Mhm.
1 or 2 new races. You have options there, so it's not
Yeah.
like you know. Um, but yeah, I think that'd be cool. Just like introduce just new elements. Like just don't rehash the same thing over and over again. Although I love, well, the rehash.
Mhm.
Um, let's bring in something new and interesting and not the same. So make it exciting. Make it. I think if you want to keep people on board with this new open world Zelda formula, you're gonna need to shake things up again, and introduce new elements into it and keep it fresh, keep it interesting, keep people
Yeah.
guessing. And it's like don't make it so it's like, oh, it's the Goron again. Cool. It's like, oh, I've already seen these guys a bunch.
Mm.
You know, so I think uh I think that about wraps it up for me and my thoughts about the next step in Zelda. Shane, do you have any final thoughts on this discussion before we wrap up?
I my only one thing, and I'll drop it in here at the end, was just co-op. And
Mm.
that's out of nowhere, kind of. But if you pull back in on the crafting, could you make a world like if we're thinking in a post Elden Ring world where people showed that they kind of like that togetherness in these big open worlds, drop in, drop out sort of co-op bit. Could you mix that in? And then knowing that Nintendo seems to be big on the chat button and the multiplayer and the being together and finally figuring out that multiplayer piece. Like, is this
Yeah.
gonna support like how do we get people to play Zelda together? And
Mm.
I don't really have an answer to that. You could make really interesting shrines if you had even just two player. If you had two players in a shrine trying to figure out a puzzle, you could you could go a ton of places with that. And I think that would be a lot of fun. Um, I would rather have them incorporate that than in just add in more crafting elements for sure.
No, no more crafting, in my opinion. Like I don't know if that's why people were looking forward to Tears of the Kingdom. That certainly isn't why I was looking forward to it.
Mm,
As soon as I found out there was crafting in Tears of the Kingdom, my excitement level went down a couple notches,
mm,
admittedly. So I don't know. I think co-op could work, but I don't know, like, would you make it mandatory to finish some shrines or,
Hmm. Do you
um
go the way of, like, Triforce Heroes and just, like, maybe we're talking about a spin-off game here that is like a
mm,
multiplayer Legends of Zelda game. Again, because 'cause they've got the chat button, so you know they're gonna try to incorporate that in a lot of their mainline games, and it was like,
yeah.
how do they do that with Zelda? And again, it could just be a smaller it could be the next top-down Zelda is multiplayer.
That would
That I
be
could probably see more.
yeah, that's the direction I would like a Four Swords adventure type thing. I think that'd
Yep,
be cool.
yep,
In like a top down, make a whole new like multiplayer Zelda experience.
yep.
Now you have your chat button. You know, Nintendo's awfully proud of it.
Mhm.
They're finally stepping into the 21st century.
Here
um,
we are.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I think I think multiplayer is more suited towards like a top down
Mhm.
Zelda experience rather than a 3D. I'm not quite sure how you would make it work because if you wanted to do multiplayer, then you would either need like uh you're not Link anymore. You create your own character, which
Mm,
I
yeah,
don't know if they would do that or it would be like okay, you can pick through you can be Zelda, you can be Link, you can be the whoever from the Zora and whoever from the Gerudo or what have you.
sure.
Um that could that could work in that way, but um I wouldn't mind multiplayer in a 3D Zelda as long as it's not forced upon you like the crafting was in Tears of the Kingdom.
Mm,
If it was optional, like I wouldn't mind like, you know, you and I sitting down together and hopping in each other's game to like take down this big boss or like, you know, or this challenging area,
yep,
knocking that out together. I think that that could be interesting.
agreed.
But like Elden Ring, it's like it, you know, it made it a little bit easier to take down these big bosses playing with a bunch of friends, but you didn't have to do that. Like you could take down this boss by yourself.
Yeah,
It's a lot harder, but um and you know, they made it hard in their own way when you're playing multiplayer. They sort of like nerf the damage that you did on the
sure.
boss.
Yep,
So you know, whatever. It could, yeah, it could work.
it could
So
work. The chat
yeah,
button's there. That's all I'm trying to think, like, how are they gonna squeeze that into the next well, every release, but
yeah.
yeah,
I think that's more so the gimmick of this thing than the mouse controls is that that chat button is they're gonna try to shoehorn it in wherever they can. So,
agreed.
but
Exciting, though. It's exciting to think about, like, we know there's nothing announced yet, and we know that there's gonna be another Zelda, so it's just fun to kinda think about now that we, can actually think about a future that has a Switch 2 in it.
yeah, we're probably 4 years away. You would imagine within the next couple years you're gonna start hearing something about it because they usually like announcing Zelda pretty far ahead of time. So
Yep.
yeah, certainly an exciting time. But that's all we have for this week. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you all on the next episode. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.